probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
Oh, hey, that's Brendan Sonnone. I'm Bud Elliot. Noles 24. It's Florida State Day on summer school. Dude, welcome back.
Thank you. Happy to be here once again. It's an honor and a privilege to be part of this fine series. And in all seriousness, it's a lot of fun to go and binge these episodes, and it's really cool to see everyone in the network kind of jump aboard and provide cool insight. So happy to kind of pull my weight a little bit here, Bud.
Florida State off a 13. Well, I guess the Orange Bowl officially, but Florida State will tell you 13-0.
Yeah.
Have you seen the media? Are they going to put 13-0 in the media guide?
Oh, I think so. They're putting 13-0 on everything. So I would imagine everything from here on out will probably get 13-0 on it. And you know what? I don't hate it. I'm okay with it. As someone who went to UCF and has multiple national championship mugs that I drink my coffee from, I'm okay with it.
I mean, that's very fair. So you did such a nice job on the preview last year. We figured we'd run it back. Speaking of running it back, Florida State's running back its entire coaching staff. What has Mike Norvell or anybody said about how the benefits of having that?
Yeah, Mike values that a ton. It's super interesting. This has been a thing that's been a big emphasis for him for a while, and I think it's rooted. But he hasn't said this. But like when he was at Memphis, like he had his coaches, poached and pillared by P5 schools all the time. Auburn, Tennessee. I mean, there was always coaches who he valued that got pulled away from him. And one of his first orders of business when he got to Florida State was kind of getting the gang back together. And there was a lot of retention of guys who were on various iterations of his staffs at Memphis. So as Florida State has had, it's interesting because the first few years you thought that, these guys weren't commodities, right? For the most part, because Florida State didn't have success. Now that they've had success, FSU has ponied up and paid a lot of money to retain these coordinators. I think Adam Fuller's up to about $2 million annually, and they've really taken care of the coaching staff. And I think that speaks to what Mike Norvell values, which is continuity. And that's among the coaching staff. Like, you don't have to change the scheme every single year, and you have the same language and guys that you trust, and you know what they are, strengths, weaknesses. But that applies to like the roster too. Like when they spend on NIL, like retention usually gets a pretty big chunk of it because Mike values continuity.
Absolutely. So an area where, as you mentioned, continuity, a little bit less continuity is the roster. They have 10 guys drafted, which certainly is something Mike Norvell, I know, will look to sell on the recruiting trail a lot. Who's going to be the easiest guys to replace, and who will be the hardest guys to replace among the departed?
Oh, wow. I've never thought of it in that terms. That's a good question. Because you lose 10. I'm going through the list here. It's funny, like someone like a Tatum Bethune, you would think, because he was a 7th-round pick at linebacker, would be easier to replace than some of the earlier round picks. But like the linebacker development hasn't been pristine recently. Like you bring back DJ Lundy after he flirted with Colorado. And so I'm looking at the roster, like a linebacker still has unknowns right now. Wide receiver, I don't feel like I have the warm and fuzzies over. I don't know, man. That's a really good question. You know what? Running back's probably the easiest position to replace, even though you lose a really good player in Trey Benson. I think he projects as a more upsidey like NFL player than he was in his final season at FSU. Was just like a elite running back in college. Like he was good, but they think they can kind of replicate some of the production they had in the run game there. So sorry, I know I was meandering, but I think that's the answer. You could probably figure out Mike Norvell really likes the running back group. The offensive staff in general likes what they have there. So I think there's a lot of confidence internally like that they can replace what Trey did with a variety of players.
Is there any position on this team that you're confident is clearly better than it was last year?
Running back would be one. I do feel like the skill set that you have, like Lawrence Toafili, we saw him at the end of last season continue to get better. What he did in the Louisville ACC championship game was borderline heroic. It gets overshadowed by what the defense did, and deservedly so. It's one of the coolest performances I've ever gotten the chance to cover. But what LT did late in the year was really impressive, and he built on that this spring. Like he was really, really good in the spring. He added a legitimate weight, not just the 5 pounds of muscle that coaches talk about. Like, no, he was legitimately bigger, and it's something that's been an issue for him. But bringing in Roydell Williams from Alabama is going to bring consistency, I think, to the run game. Jalen Lucas, speedster from Indiana, they think they hit on that evaluation. Like he's a ton of fun. So that's a position I feel good with. I would say like so you're not going to replace Jared Verse. It's tough to say like, oh, it's going to be better without Jared Verse, but the depth there like has potential to be better than it was last year. Like you won't maybe see this drop off when you go to your second string. You can go to your like three deep based on like how Byron Turner or someone like Aaron Hester do. Like the emergence of Marvin Jones Jr. to go along with Patrick Payton like is really nice. Then you have Sonnone Lolohea from Oregon State. So like I don't want to say that's going to be better than defensive end or last year with Jared Verse there, but like, man, I don't think it's a huge drop off when you talk about just totality of like what you'll be able to do throughout the course of a season. But I think to the question, Bud, like there's not a lot of positions that you can say definitively, like, yes, like 100% better than. Some will be just as good. Maybe offensive line with more experience, I would say, is another one, but others will certainly take a step back because of what you lost from talent and experience perspective.
So they're running back the same scheme, but obviously you fit the scheme to your players every year. And one of the new players is DJU from Oregon State. How do you anticipate this offense to look different this year than it did in 2023?
I think you'll have a lot more. So I was going to say efficiency is not the right word. You're going to be pushing the ball downfield a lot more, and I think you'll do it with more success. And success being more chunk plays. I think your yards per attempt has a chance to go up. And listen, with like the way Jordan Travis was managing the offense last year, even with some pieces maybe not being like continuity wise as tight as you would like, and with Jordan maybe not being as quite as sharp in some areas, like with vertical passing as he was the previous year, it was still good. But you have a chance for it to be like really good. I think the whole offense is going to be based, but on what DJU can do as a deep ball thrower. The arm strength is like legit. The velocity is big time, but then just the ability to like flick of the wrist and 50 yards downfield. There was one play in spring practice where he rolled to his right, had to throw it across the field. He did it with so much ease, but it was legitimately like 70 air yards or maybe a yard or two short of that. And it was accurate and it was precise. And like, I don't know how many quarterbacks nationally can do that. So that's his skill set. Like that's what he can do. You have to now kind of build around it, which I think Mike Gravel is really excited for, but that's all going to be predicated on running the football well. DJU is going to be part of that, right? Like DJ Ungale is like a legitimate, like 250 pounds, runs more fluidly than I think people would think. So you're going to use him in that run game to go along with the running backs I mentioned earlier. And then you're going to build off of that with play action shots and vertical passing game. I think that's kind of what the makeup of the offense is going to be. Whereas last year was a lot of screens and a lot of you're trying to stretch things horizontally. I think the vertical passing game, which they tried to do last year, is not super successfully. I think it will be successful this year based on the personnel you have.
I look at the receiving core, and last year Malik Benson in Alabama, one of like the least efficient receivers in the entire country in terms of like yards per route run, yards per target, that kind of stuff. But I read all the reports on Knowles 24/7, and it seems like he's really stepping up. Is that like he's going to be a good ACC receiver? Can we feel confident about that, or is it more like this room has some questions and he's the one? You see what I'm saying? Like going from being like the number 3 who was kind of bad last year at Alabama to Florida State, and he's getting hyped as the number 1. Does he have that potential to be like a good receiver in the ACC?
I think he'd ideally be like a really good number 2 wide receiver on a good college offense. I think that'd be your ideal placement for him. He'll probably have to be your number 1 wide receiver this season for Florida State. I don't think anyone really captured the imagination opposite of him. And there were some injuries and stuff in spring, and just guys, younger players not playing super consistently. Losing Destin Hill was tough because that was going to be probably a factor for you. He's out for the season with an ACL injury. They're expecting big things from him in year 2. That was tough. They kicked around options in the transfer portal, Bud. Didn't love what the market kind of bared out and kind of stuck with what they have. Kentron Portier is a guy who has had flashes in his career, but he's also a redshirt senior who hasn't really put it all together yet. And same with Darian Williamson. Like if he's healthy, there's moments there that are really exciting, but year 5 now, like he hasn't been healthy yet. And so those are things like just generally, history is a pretty good precedent for what's going to happen. As we apply that to like Malik Benson, I will say like the Alabama situation last year, like I know you follow NFL draft stuff, like Jermaine Burton had good production at Alabama, but there was some of these like metrics coming out around the draft time that showed like just how inaccurate some of the passes coming his way were. And I don't know how to judge what Malik Benson did at Alabama. I know what I've seen in the spring. The speed is legitimate. That's a real thing. Again, complementary to what DJ Uongale does well. But I thought he got better at kind of playing with precision and tracking the ball and some of the technique stuff that they look for him to do as the spring went on. So I'm pretty optimistic. I know the coaching staff really likes Malik Benson too. I think the bigger question is like who steps up opposite with him. Do you have enough to really help you out there in the passing game? Maybe Ja'Kai Douglas in the slot, but like I don't know who's going to be the big wide receiver. Be great if it was Hakeem Williams, sophomore wide receiver, former 5-star recruit. He didn't seize the moment in the spring. We'll see what he does in the summer if he can position himself to kind of be your complementary weapon to Malik Benson there.
That'd be huge for him. Obviously, Norvell, if you look back at his Memphis days, does have quite the history of throwing the ball to the backs. There were several years there at Memphis where running back was like top 3 or top 2 in yards or catches, or in some cases. I know some of these guys are kind of hybrid, but you mentioning Toafili as a guy that catches the ball pretty well. With the emphasis on the run game, could you see a lot of passes to the running backs as well?
I think absolutely. I think one, it's because a few reasons. One is because the lack of proven options at wide receiver. You're going to have to supplement that somehow. And this past year, you had Jaheim Bell, who was kind of the pseudo tight end, running back, wide receiver, did a little bit of everything. And so even at tight end, I don't think you're going to be getting quite as much from that position from a statistical standpoint as you did last year, even though Kyle Morlock comes back. But Jackson West is your probable number 2. He's a blocking tight end. That's probably what he's going to be. Say all that because I think with lack of options at tight end, with lack of a ton of proven answers at wide receiver, I think one thing is that Lawrence Toafili can be some sort of weapon for you as a receiver. And then even Jalen Lucas has shown that at times at Indiana. To the other point, Bud is that Mike Norvell loves throwing the balls to the running back. Like he's had a lot of success with that in multiple iterations of his offense. I think back at Memphis, Tony Pollard was someone that he was able to get the ball outside to, a lot of screens and stuff like that, and that worked out really well for them. I would implore viewers here to go and check out the X's and O channel. Kev Little did a really good job putting something together with the 21 personnel that he thinks FSU could utilize. I think someone malleable like LT makes a lot of sense. You can use him and Jalen Lucas together at the same time. You can have LT in the slot, and you can have like Keziah Holmes or Roydell Williams, one of the bigger backs in the backfield. You can do all sorts of fun stuff. And I'm excited to see what Mike Norvell does with that, because I think he's going to have to be creative this year. He's usually at his best when he's kind of forced to be in his bag a little bit.
Is there a player on this team, offense or defense, who you don't see get the love nationally so far in the preseason? I know we're kind of early in the preseason, but you're like, man, just wait. Like this guy's a potential All-American. This guy's a potential All-Conference guy, and he doesn't really get any love to that effect so far.
I think it's going to be Azareye'h Thomas at cornerback is the name that I think is not a household name right now, because he was a backup technically last season, although he played a pretty prominent role, more than 200 snaps. I forget how many off the top of my head, but he ended up being like a sub starter by the end of the season. And that ACC championship game, I think they ended up playing him more than Fentrell Cypress, who also returns at one of the cornerback spots, because AZ was kind of the hot hand at that time. So Azareye'h Thomas is a third-year cornerback. He was a blue chip recruit from the Panhandle. Kind of had an interesting recruitment where things kind of fell apart with some of his other options. FSU was in a good spot there. It was during the whole Travis Hunter ordeal, and AZ Thomas was kind of like didn't capture like national headlines, but it was a big win for Florida State at that time at that position. And like he has gotten better, year over year the last 2 seasons, and then like the jump that he made in the spring was really impressive because he's long, he's athletic, but now he's like adding this element of physicality with consistency to his game, and that's coming with confidence too. Like, there's a ton of NFL tools there. I'd be surprised if he wasn't like a day 2 NFL draft pick. He could push to be a round 1 guy, and he's someone that with like his ball skills has a chance to rack up some interceptions. And if that happens, then he'll probably be someone that is on all conference, all American type of list for sure.
So we'll stay on that defensive side. In the secondary, you lose Ronaldo Green, you lose Jarian Jones, who finally put it together and had a really, really nice year in 2023. Draft pick, 3rd round, 4th round for Jarian
to the Jags.
Yeah. And then Dent in the secondary as well, who's kind of a priority UDFA type player. Can this secondary avoid a big fall off?
So it's funny. I was going back and listening to just kind of prepare for this year and listening to what we did last year. I think one of the few things we hit on a lot of stuff, man. I think we missed on just how good Jarian Jones was going to be.
Yeah.
And man, I don't think anyone knew he was going to be like a 90 PFF, like elite type of nickel corner. And he was, and to his credit, like he was really good. But what made him so good was how he communicated. I thought that really stood out, and that was the level of experience that Jarian Jones, Bernardo Green, Akeem Dent, the guys that you mentioned that they're replacing, like that's a lot of experience that they had and a lot of years of communicating together. And we saw at times, in 2022 when the defense was good, above average to good. One of the Achilles' heels was they would sometimes give up some deep shots, and that would come off like miscommunication stuff a lot. And I think we saw that a little bit more in spring, where there was more MAs than there had been maybe all of like last season and 2023 combined. So I do have some concerns that you were so proficient at not giving up big play last year, and it partially was your players were really good. They also communicated at a really high level together. And now you're going to have Azaria Thomas, who again I think highly of, but he's a new starter. Fentrell Cypress comes back, so he's a starter, but you're probably going to look at Earl Little Jr. as your starting nickelback. He doesn't have any college experience really in 2 years at Alabama. And then at safety, you bring back Shaheem Brown. I like Shaheem Brown. I think he has NFL tools. But then opposite of him, like it's going to be a newer safety. It's either going to be Devontae Brown, who's never played the position before. That's going to be Conrad Hussey potentially, who has a ton of talent, but his the hits or misses he had last year as a true freshman were pretty glaring. It was pretty polarizing. And so I say all that because I think the secondary could be good last year, but I think they're going to miss what they had last season in terms of just that continuity, the communication. I don't think you can replicate that, and that might be a problem earlier on in the season. It's something that I'm certainly going to be like interested to monitor. If they have an Achilles heel, I don't think it's going to be talent. I think it's going to be that aspect that we'll have to kind of watch for.
Is there some chance that the front seven, and particularly the front, is so good that you don't have to blitz very much, and you're able to play a lot more two deep type looks?
That'd be great. That'd be a great situation if you can get into that. I mean, I think at defensive end, like the athleticism that they have there is really impressive. Like Pat Payton has been solid, real solid over the last 2 seasons. This is a big year for him. He's transformed his body. Some of the bad weight that he's played with before doesn't seem to be there now. I'm imagining that'll only continue in the next few months here going into the season. And then Marvin Jones Jr., man, I wasn't super fired up about that take when they got him from Georgia, his former 5-star recruit. Even his first few week, maybe 5 to 6 practices weren't super sharp. Like they're fine. There was good moments, there were bad ones, and then just something clicked for him. And if he continues that, it's like he realized, oh, I'm just more athletic than the guy across from me, or I'm also like super explosive and strong and powerful, like all those tools that made him a 5-star recruit. It's like he figured it all out. And so if that continues, like that's a really good combination. Josh Farmer, when he was healthy last season, was really good. If Daryl Jackson at defensive tackle comes anywhere close to like his upside, like that's a really good starting four. I don't think it would be crazy to say like that might be a better starting four than you had last season when you're talking about Pat and Josh are you're older. If Daryl hits, like if he hits, like he might be someone who's drafted in the top 45 or so, like a Braden Fisk. So yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at 4 draft picks among that starting defensive line, and then the depth with Sonnone Ololahea. He was a third team All Pac-12 guy last year. That guy's probably coming off the bench for you, so you're going to have options. The depth at defensive tackle concerns me some, Bud. Like I think that might be another weakness on the defensive side. But if we're being nitpicky, saying your third defensive tackle, isn't as good as it was last year, it was Fabian Lovett was $100,000 undrafted free agent. I think it shows where the program's at right now. Like that, it's how high the standard and the expectations are, and if that's your weakness, okay. Like I think you can live with that. But the defensive line should be really good, and I think they're gonna be really good at getting the quarterbacks. They have so much speed and so much depth there that should be a strength.
Could be a lot. You could do a lot worse than what you described there. Clearly, what needs to happen for this team to make the college football playoff?
Other than win every single game.
Well, that didn't actually work last year.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah, that didn't happen last year, did it?
Have
Well,
Mike retire and then like promise he's going to game day before everybody knows it.
I didn't say it. You did. Yeah. So with the expanded invitational field there, 12 teams. I think if you make the ACC championship game, you're probably sitting in a pretty good position. What's the Vegas line as we're recording this? Like 9.5, 9 wins? Where's it at?
Yeah, a team that's a place that doesn't sponsor CVS has Florida State at minus 160 to miss the playoff, plus 140 to make. So it's call it, it's not quite 50-50, but it's about.
If you can get into I think double digit wins is what does it.
So 10-2.
How that look? Yeah. So whether it's you getting into ACC championship game with 9 wins and beating a Clemson, Miami, Louisville, whoever it may be this year, a dark horse, Virginia Tech, whoever it may be, or if you get into the ACC championship game, or even if you miss it with 10 wins, like I think you'll be on the bubble there. So I think that's kind of like the sweet spot to where if you hit double digit wins, if DJ Uiagalelei stays healthy for the entire year, if he's as good as the coaching staff thinks he is, if the defense, if the continuity holds and some of the guys who you're asking to step up, like a DJ Lundy, a Josh Farmer, Pat Payton, maybe guys who haven't had like the most like mature off seasons at times, if they show that they've grown up and can be leaders, then yeah, I think you have a pretty good shot at it because you're talented. The schedule's not easy, but like it's not. How many like easy wins would you say they have, Bud, on there? Like 7
6,
or so?
7? Yeah.
I mean, so right there, like you should be in a
For a
decent
playoff team, they should have 7 gimmies easily.
Yeah.
I mean, like
So,
if you think you're a playoff caliber team, yeah.
So yeah, if you find a way to beat Miami on the road, to beat Notre Dame on the road, that's when you start kind of talking about what the team can be from a postseason run perspective. Those are kind of the games you need to win and the amount of wins that you probably need to stockpile there to have a shot at it this year.
Brennan, really appreciate it, man. We'll be following all the coverage on Noles 24/7, also the On the Bench podcast. Make sure you go follow them. It's an awesome time.